Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Barrel Chat Podcast. We are a podcast that provides an unfiltered look into the craft beer industry from the untrained palates of outsiders. My name is Mathew Muncy, and as always, I am joined by Dustin Wood. Mr. Wood, how are you doing today?
Good, man. I think you missed the most important part of the description. It's from the outside, untrained palates of dumbasses.
Yeah, I probably should have. Yeah, we should change that to just
you got to
dumbasses.
enunciate the dumbass portion.
Yeah, I forgot. I was so subtle about it. Got to enunciate it. Welcome to episode 5 of the Barrel Chat Podcast. Today, we are bringing you one of my favorite beers. This is a vacation beer for me, and I've brought one back this year, or technically last year, and we're finally getting to drink it, so I'm very excited for this. Dustin, you want to tell us a little bit about this beer?
Yeah, one might call it the triple-double, but it's made by Westbrook, and it is the Westbrook Mexican Cake 2022 version. It's an Imperial Double Stout. It's basically designed to be a Mexican hot chocolate beer. It is 10.5% ABV and 25 IBUs. It's an Imperial Stout with cocoa nibs, vanilla beans, cinnamon, and habanero peppers.
And for those of you who don't know, Westbrook is not from Indiana. They are out of South Carolina, Mount Pleasant to be precise. So every summer, my family goes out to South Carolina, and back before we had a kid, we would always go to Westbrook because we'd get there, 4 hours before the Airbnb would be available.
Because Matt likes to drive overnight.
Yep. And so we would do that. And so we would just go stop at Westbrook, and we would just drink at Westbrook. And it was probably about 2016 or so is when 16 is when we found Westbrook, and absolutely love Westbrook. If you were going to South Carolina, I would ask anyone to try Westbrook. Not only, especially during the summers when they bring out their Mexican chocolate cake. I think it's May is when they release it. So when we go in June, it's always there. It's fairly cheap. I think this bottle was like $17 for what it is. It's great. They do variants and stuff like that. You can go to the brewery and get all the variants on flight and stuff. But then on top of that, and this is just kind of me shelling out for Westbrook because I really like that beer. They make some of the best IPAs I've ever had, like house beer IPAs. 1 claw, 2 claw, 3 claw. I think 3 claws are hazy. Outstanding. The Gosa beer is fucking phenomenal.
They were one of the
bringing
originals.
that back. We are basically, when I come back this year, I'm just going to bring Westbrook and Edmonds Oast, and we're just going to make a couple long podcasts.
That's fine. We're going to do the same thing. In another trip, I'm bringing back Side Project and Shared. So,
yeah, but we're just going to do a couple long ones of just those, so that way it's not like 6 months of Westbrook and Edmonds Oast, but like we're gonna have some fun with those because I love these two breweries. They are my favorite, and that Gosa is just it is the beach beer. Like,
wasn't it like one of the first few Gosas to be released to the market? Like they sort of in the US at least,
yeah,
they
because
sort
it's
of
like
made
a
that
German
style hot.
Yeah, it's like a German beer that they kind of like kicked off, and it's where I found Gosa beers for the first time, and I was like, this sounds terrible to me. And then I drank it, I'm like, man, salt and beer just works.
Yeah,
like I don't get it, but it works.
Isn't it just like a super simple can, like a white can with like green Gosa
all
on
of
it?
Their beer cans are very simple. Like their IPA ones are blue, green, and pink, and they just have a crab on it. And like I said, it's just 1 claw, 2 claw, 3 claw. So very simple branding, very simple names. It is a very good brewery. Like they just make really good beer. And every year we go to Total Wine, so I'm trying everything from around there. Absolutely nothing compares to Westbrook and Edmonds Oast. There's a few others like Holy City, which are pretty good. Going to Holy City sucks because it smells like a garbage pit. because they're next to like a paper mill.
But that's in Charleston, though. So
it's like North Charleston.
But Charleston has that gross paper mill smell.
That's North Charleston. Charleston doesn't have that. North Charleston does. And it's all because there's a paper mill there. And apparently that's just how they smell.
That's how Terre Haute used to be.
Yeah. So it does kind of suck because it just smells like that the whole time. But I just wanted to throw that out there. A little bit of background on Westbrook, how I found it. I try and grab a bottle of this every year when I go down there and bring it back to drink, or drink it there by myself. Nobody else really drinks these kind of beers, so I don't like drinking them by myself there because that's a lot. But
few things. First, I've meant to ask this about a few other locations we've talked about, but we'll start on this episode. Is Westbrook family friendly?
So I don't remember. We stopped going to the brewery once we had the kid because most of them are not. I don't feel like most of them are. There is an outside, so maybe the outside is.
Yeah.
I don't know what the rules are down there, to be honest.
Okay,
We haven't gone back. Typically, Edmonds Oast is the only one I go to anymore, but I'll still get Westbrook when I'll hop over to Total Wine or something and grab some Westbrook and use that. But I'm mostly drinking Edmonds Oast, and when we go to Edmonds Oast, it's an adult only night. The kid stays with grandma, and we all go out, and because there's an Edmonds Oast tap room restaurant. It's literally like in this. It's like this U-shaped business park area, but then there's also like this new Mexican restaurant, El Ranchero or something like that, and it's made by the guy who owns Lewis Barbecue. So if you know anything about the barbecue scene in South Carolina, Lewis Barbecue is fucking best, one of the best of the best. He has a Mexican restaurant that's literally next door. So we go eat at the Mexican restaurant, but like while we're waiting, you go and you can just grab drinks. Like they have a drive-through window. Sweet. That you just walk up to and get beer and then go back and sit down. And then so last year I bought a barley wine, and it was like a 12-ounce barley wine, 16-ounce barley wine, I think. And I just took that into the Mexican restaurant with me because I was like, oh man, I didn't think about this. Nobody wanted any. I'm like, I'm not gonna throw it away. And so I just walked into it, and they were like, oh yeah, you're fine. I was like, this is fantastic.
So here, sorry to derail there, I guess, but
I already derailed this podcast enough.
But I think that's something we should try and touch on with both of us having kids, and a lot of probably the listenership having at least kids or being interested in whether it's kid or dog friendly. And we can talk later on about whether we think dog friendly is a good idea or not. But here on the bottle, it's way back in 2011, many, many moons ago. We brewed our first anniversary beer, a serious Imperial aged stout with cocoa nibs, vanilla beans, cinnamon sticks, and fresh habanero peppers. It was so damn delicious, we decided to brew it every year, once per year. Salud. So realistically, this started as like their anniversary beer, and then everybody was like, you better brew that bitch again.
I know somebody told us that they hope after the first episode that they hope we go in blind. And technically we went in blind with this one because you never know what you're going to get on a year-to-year basis of a beer like this. But I also already knew that I liked this beer. Like, not this one specifically, but like overall Mexican cake. Like, there's a reason I buy it every single year when I go down.
It's so hard to go in blind if literally we drink in this state all the fucking time.
Yeah, it can be. But like, I mean, the two transients, we basically went in blind. Sometimes it's not as fun, though.
The downside to going blind is sometimes we shit on their beer.
Yep. And then that's the beer you drink, and it's not that fun. So all right, let's hop into the actual beer. Enough of me kind of rambling on here. So looking down the BJCP style guide, this is going to be for an Imperial Stout, double stout. A little bit of history. Now, we did just do this on the Junior Swirl episode, so if you are a long-time 5-episode listener, you've already heard this, but if you're brand new, we just want to make sure that you hear it too. So, the more of these we do, you're going to hear some repeats. We apologize, but you never know when there's a new person, and we don't want to force them to go listen to another episode. So a little bit of history. The term Imperial simply refers to a big beer, which is exactly what this is. That's in both terms of flavor and alcohol. It's used interchangeably with double or strong. to refer to any style of beer brewed with an extra dose of grains and hops to produce a higher ABV. So as we mentioned, this one's 10.5. One of the cool things that we found out recently about this style, we knew it had the roots in English porters, because that's basically where all stouts come from, is just a bigger English porter. That they started brewing back in the 1700s as exports because it helped beer last longer on the ship rides all around the world. But apparently these beers became very popular with the Russian court of Catherine the Great, who was the Empress of Russia. And so that is how we get the Russian Imperial Stout.
God, that's still fucking interesting.
Yeah.
Like, that's still super interesting to me that, like, we get that name because their court was like, I really want to get fucked up.
And there's also one thing that I didn't think about when we did the Junie Swirl and we brought up the Russian Imperial Stout. Do we see that term go away now?
I don't know. That's actually a conversation I've seen kind of spark up on some social media platforms where there's not really a good, like, replacement for Russian Imperial Stout, as opposed to just calling it like an Imperial Stout, but there's also an Imperial Stout. So I don't really know what the difference is. I didn't think there was
a difference.
I don't know if there is.
Yeah. I mean, based on this, there doesn't seem to be.
So
based on the research I did.
Is it something that gets canceled?
I did my own research.
Is it something that gets canceled? I don't see, truthfully, I don't see why not, and I wouldn't be surprised.
I could see people like laying low on it now and then it kind of reappearing later on.
No, I mean, somebody like Tin Man, where they make Tsar, that's a Russian Imperial Stout that's named after.
Tin Man still around?
I don't know.
They got bought out at one point, and then I thought it was like a
Who
collective.
knows? But if Tin Man was still around,
because they got bought out by like the people who bought out Victory, and then it was like a collective of beer.
All kinds of weird stuff was happening.
I can't say I've seen Tin Man on a shelf anywhere.
Neither have I, but I can't see I looking for it.
Now we're gonna have to look this up after the episode.
But again, I think, should it be canceled? Maybe. It's not something that I really think a whole lot about because the Russians aren't brewing it. So it's not like we're drinking Russian Imperial Stouts. Although, don't get me wrong, I would try a Russian Imperial Stout.
It would just be vodka.
It would, but it'd be brown. So
I don't think I would try brown vodka.
It's vodka. It's okay. All right, derailed enough.
Derailed. If you can't tell, we recorded an episode before this episode, so I feel like the odd number episodes are always going to be a little off the rails and weirder. That's all right, though. We like to have fun. We're having a good time. Overall impression, an intensely flavored big dark ale with a wide range of flavor balances and regional interpretations. Roasty burnt malt with deep, dark, or dried fruit flavors.
Flutes?
Yeah, I did this last time, too.
Dried flutes?
I don't know what it is about reading and like talking at the same time, but I just failed.
Are you dyslexic?
Maybe. I can read perfectly fine, but like saying it at the same time is just tough. And a warming, bittersweet finish. Despite the intense flavors, the components need to meld together to create a complex, harmonious beer, not a hot mess. I do love that it's in the BJCP official guidelines. They write not a hot mess.
Yeah, because we've had hot messes.
Yes, but it's funny. Like that is the lexicon used in the official BJCP guidelines. Like this professional organization is saying your beer cannot be a hot mess. Like there's a bit that is because hot mess is a very subjective phrase, but you also know exactly what it means when it comes to a beer like this.
You do. So I'm going to learn from the last episode, and I'm not going to discuss a whole lot until we actually dive into the step-by-steps here, because really it's the same thing repeated. Yep. But I think it hits most of these, and we'll kind of break them down here for you as we get into appearance and aroma. But the overall impressions are exactly what you would want it to be.
Yeah, I think it matches, especially what we ourselves anticipate getting from a Imperial Stout.
Well, what we harp on, and we'll talk about those with the mouthfeel and stuff as well. But it's the things that we harp on if you know us from past lives.
So starting here with appearance, color may range from very dark reddish brown to jet black, deep tan to dark brown head. Generally has a well-formed head, although head retention may be low to moderate. High alcohol and viscosity may be visible in legs when beer is swirled in a glass.
Okay, so
legs for days.
She got legs for days. I did pour this beer really well the first time, and it had a beautiful, like,
yes,
almost like tan colored head that looked like you could float a quarter on top of it.
Yeah, your pour was much better than mine.
It was beautiful. It did dissipate, so it does dissipate, much like it says that it's okay for it to do. It does have legs for days, and as far as appearance and color, it is dark as motor oil.
Yep. This is, as I said with Junie Swirl, this is grandfather dyed hair black.
This is as dark as my soul.
But I do think with the head on the beer, what little of it that I had, since I did such a crappy job of pouring it, definitely has that deep tan, dark brown look to it.
Yeah, so I love the like color contrast that comes with stouts. It's almost like a color palette that, if you think of Starbucks, if you were to throw green in it, it's like Starbucks's color palette. You've got the dark brown, the like darker tan, and then green.
Yeah. That's a pretty good example of that. Aroma. Rich and complex with variable amounts of roasted grains, maltiness, fruity esters, hops, and alcohol. The roasted malt character can take on coffee, dark chocolate, or slightly burnt tones, and can be light to moderately strong. The malt aroma can be subtle to rich and barley wine-like.
I'm gonna put a flavor and a scent out there that I don't know that Matt's gonna be able to pull.
Cinnamon? Can't pull it.
But I get a lot of cinnamon on the nose with some burnt toast characteristics. Not a whole lot of chocolate. There's a little bit of chocolate, but I run into the cinnamon sort of overpowers for me, that chocolate note.
So is the cinnamon the kind of like burning sensation? Like that's not the habanero, that's the cinnamon.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to smell the habanero.
Yeah. So then like I smell it, but I guess when I think of cinnamon, I think of like Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Something like that, but I think that might be too sweet.
That's a beer we'll do later, but
yeah. But I think maybe that's my failure at cinnamon is like I don't just.
Do we need to go get cinnamon out of the kitchen and let you smell it?
I mean, there's a possibility, but it's like outside of that, like it's like I don't have like cinnamon candles or cinnamon sticks for anything. Like I know that cinnamon kind of has like a sort of like spiciness smell to it. So maybe this whole time I have been smelling it, but I've never thought it was that.
I also pull quite a bit of alcohol out of this.
That's what I feel like I was smelling out of this. And that I wouldn't associate with the cinnamon, but just the high alcohol.
Yeah, it's what, 13 or something like that? Or
10, only 10 and a half.
10
it's
and a
been
half?
sitting in my pantry, a.k.a. my cellar, for the since June. So this was bottled in May.
Yeah, May 4th of 22.
So
it was bottled.
We're close to a year. We're what, like 4 months off, so 8 months. But, it's been properly-ish kept. It hasn't been sitting in light at all.
It's been better kept than some of the beers Matt's kept before.
That is 100% true.
But, to me, it hits all the notes you would need it to hit. The head was beautiful when I originally poured it. It was dark in color, a fake grandpa's hair dye, as Matt would describe it. And it is beautifully aromatic, even out of these mediocre glasses.
Yeah. I do get a little bit of coffee. I don't know about the chocolate. Maybe a smidge.
I think the alcohol kills a lot of the coffee notes. Or the chocolate notes.
I don't get barley wine. I'll say I don't really get the barley wine on that one. We didn't get that one on Junie Swirl either. So
it's the adjuncts. We're on the far side of what would be like a Russian Imperial Stout or an Imperial Stout. So it's more of the pastry stout version of that.
When I go back this summer, I will see if I can find whatever is used as the base beer and see if they make that and see if I can bring that back.
You better bring an adjunct version next time, like a fancy version.
Well, yeah, now that we haven't been doing this for 3 years, so I have no reason to bring it back. And the only reason I brought this one back is because we talked about doing a bottle share that we never did. And then we just started the podcast. So now that I have a reason to actually spend like $100, $200 on beer to bring back somehow and actually get it back without it being an issue, I will do that. Don't worry.
We'll just do a bottle share episode.
You'll just need to fly out to South Carolina for a day, and we'll just drink all the beer by the pool and record episodes.
Hear me out. I'm going to need a job first.
But if you don't have a job, then that gives you more time to fly out.
Matt's paying the airline ticket.
Hey, man, I make that kind of money hopefully soon.
Done.
In the next couple of weeks with my pay raise.
Call it done.
Flavor-wise, rich, deep, complex, and frequently quite intense, with variable amounts of roasted malt grains, maltiness, fruity esters, hop bitterness, and flavor, and alcohol. Moderate to aggressively high roasted malt. Flavors can suggest bittersweet or unsweetened chocolate, cocoa, or strong coffee. The palate and finish can vary from relatively dry to moderately sweet, usually with some lingering roastiness, hop bitterness, and warming character. The balance and intensity of flavors can be affected by aging, with some flavors becoming more subdued over time and some age. Vinous? What? I don't remember this even being in here. Vinous or port-like qualities developing. I must have copied something wrong because I do not remember that word in Junie Swirl. And it's not like I've been.
It's wine-like
the entire time.
That's what that means.
I know, but still, vinous,
probably.
I'm
but
just making up words now. BJCP.
But it does have the legs of a wine when you swirl it. But I would say that as far as flavors go, this one's probably not going to fit the mold. Realistically, I mean, it is big. It is roasted. You can taste some of the like bittersweet and unsweetened chocolates, but to me, like the peppers and the cinnamon really take over, which is great. And that's what I want out of this like Mexican hot chocolate style, because these peppers have subtly taken over the flavor and I love the heat.
Yes, you are not wrong. So I kind of have two thinkings of this. The more it heats up, the more it warms up, the more you kind of lose the vanilla bean and cocoa, and the more the habanero and the cinnamon really come out, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but also like, I don't know. Like I like a beer that, has, when it says it's got everything in it, you taste it the whole time. And I feel like it's starting to lose a little bit of that.
That's hard to do, man. Like
I'm sure.
That's really hard to do with temperatures because one, aging causes a lot of things to change, but as temperatures change on the beer, it's going to release the things that, like peppers, when they're refrigerated, don't really have the same flavor profile as if they've been like sitting out on the shelf. If you eat them, let alone if you put them into a beer and temperature gauge is there. So colder peppers in a beer are going to be less like potent and less realistically spicy than they are on this like room temperature style of a pour. So, I mean, while I agree that I want to read a label and go, yeah, fuck yeah, I get all those flavors. I did get all those flavors, but I do really appreciate when a beer changes as I'm drinking it in a good way, not in a bad way. I don't want it to like turn into hot liquid shit, but I do like when you can see the transition of the style over the temperature changes.
I will say we poured out the rest of that bottle. Definitely a lot more habanero in there now. I'm picking up. Definitely warmer on the back end.
Yeah, it's a little spicy now.
But I do feel like it brought out more of the vanilla and stuff. So I don't know if maybe this is something where things settled on the bottom and we didn't swirl it around before we opened it. So maybe that's something that happened.
She's lovely.
But the last couple of drinks I've had contradict what I literally just said. So that is kind of nice. Last but not least, we have mouthfeel. Full to very full-bodied and chewy, with a velvety, luscious texture. This is just my absolute
a porn ad right
favorite,
here.
Man. Yeah, like let me read about your beer. Gentle, smooth warmth from alcohol should be present and noticeable, but not a primary characteristic. In well-conditioned versions, the alcohol can be deceptive. Should not be syrupy or
attenuated.
Carbonation may be low to moderate, depending on age and conditioning.
It's thick, but it's not chewy thick by any means. I've had some chewy thick beers. This is not one of them. So I mean, it's not missing the mark on being thick, but it's not thick.
Yeah. It's like, this is going to sound so fucking stupid. And I know saying it is going to, mouthfeel wise for me is like someone took a stout and a porter and mixed them together. And it's like, you get the thickness of the stout, but then like the end of it is kind of like the thickness of a porter.
Yeah. And I wonder
if it just kind of smooths out.
I wonder if that's like the adjuncts that are in it, if it takes away the carbonation, so it's not quite as carbonated as if it were just to be like an Imperial Stout, like the big version of the traditional one of these, if it exists. Because when I think of like super thick stouts, generally my mind goes to ones that are just Russian Imperial Stouts that don't have the adjuncts, because like vanilla beans and all the little like flakes and stuff really can affect the body and the volume of the beer. But as far as everything else, I mean, I think it hits the mark. It's full bodied. The alcohol doesn't take over, but it's there. It is definitely deceptive. You could smoke this beer like in a day. You could drink the shit out of it and be super drunk really fast.
10.5. Like I would honestly say it feels bigger than 10.5, but I think a lot of that has to do with the habanero and just a little bit of the alcohol. Again, it's been sitting for 8 months, so you know that some of the alcohol is probably a little bit more noticeable at this point. That could also be the reason for the vanilla bean being a little less, show up a little less in the taste. One thing I don't think we really hit on is the habanero flavor profile. And what I mean by that is, in the past, when we drink spice beers, I'm not usually a fan of those. Habanero I do like. I'm an enigma when it comes to the pepper beers. I do not like the actual taste of jalapeno, so I will not drink jalapeno beers. Has absolutely nothing to do with the quote unquote spiciness of a jalapeno. Habanero, I love the taste and I love the back end kick of this because it's not overwhelming. We've had a few where it's just like, ooh, that is like, you're hot from a spiciness level, not from an alcohol level. And those I don't really enjoy.
Looking at you, Sean.
Yeah. But this one, I don't know if it's the 8 months has helped it or if this is what it was like, coming off the line. But I do feel like that spice is just right. Like it's just enough kick at the back end to let you know it's there, but it's not overpowering.
So here comes the spice wing nerd in me. Habanero makes a very unique flavor, especially in beers, or let me rephrase this, especially in stouts and like sweeter beers, because a habanero has a sweet heat. And that may sound dumb as fuck, but that's literally what happens with a habanero. It's a sweet heat, so it's got like a nice flavor profile, but it's still got, it hits lingering heat. So when you take a bite of like a habanero mango wing or whatever it may be, they're sweet up front, and then as you're like finishing that bite, it starts to hit with the heat, which is what's great with this beer is it allows for it to be sweet on the beginning of the drink, allow for the cinnamon to come out, allow for some of the chocolates to come out, but then finish with that like subtle heat of the habanero, because that's just how the pepper works.
I have to agree with that. Sounds a lot smarter than the way I brought it up. Beer tier list, specialty beer list. So as a quick overview, we have 2 of these so far. Number 18, sitting in the A tier, is Transient Artisan Ale Junie Swirl 2022. Go and check that episode out. And then down in the D tier, Transient Artisan Ale Ardent. I'd say listen to that one. I thought that was a good one, and we could very well be wrong, but that is where we put it. So where are we putting Westbrook's Mexican Cake 2022?
So to me, it's higher than 18. I'm hesitant to say it's an S tier beer. I think it could be, but I know that I've had other Mexican style stouts that are from like side project that are just fucking mind blowing. So for me, it's like an 8 to 10.
Oh, so we're going low S tier. Wow.
No, oh, sorry. 8 to 12. I'm trying to like skate the beginning and the end.
Okay. I was thinking A. So the one thing I will say that makes this hard is we've had a ton just in our life Imperial Stouts, Russian Imperial Stouts, and there are a few I like better, but this is also a unique one because it's a Mexican cake and most are just, you know, a Russian Imperial Stout, or it's got like one adjunct, like here's a vanilla one, or here's this, you know. I do think it's very well done. And
it's
I think that's almost 75% of it. Like because if it's not well done, the rest of the shit just doesn't matter.
It's not a hot mess.
Yeah. And then after that, it's what does it taste like? Because you can smell a beer, but I mean, we've had a few where it's like you smell them and it just doesn't smell like anything. And then you drink it and you're like, well, this is amazing. So it's like, to me, it's the taste that's really the overall feature of it. And you can tell a good quality beer. You can tell this is a good base beer. Like that is very obvious. We've had our fair share of ones that you could tell the base beer was garbage and the adjuncts just didn't help it. I was thinking 12 to 15, somewhere in there. Like,
okay.
Like I think it's better than Junie Swirl 2022, but I don't think it's that much better.
So this makes me want to try a Junie with peppers in it, because I think that this is basically Junie with peppers added. Like they have a very similar profile, and I think Junie would have benefited from some peppers. I'm feeling like 12.
Okay.
I was going to say 11, and then you said 12, so I'm feeling 12.
All right. Yeah, we can compromise at 12. I think that's high to be on the record. I lean more towards 15, and the only reason I say that is because I just don't think it's that. I don't think it's that much better than Junie. And I know 6 positions doesn't feel like a lot, but when looking at it, it looks like a lot. And I don't know. But I'm okay with 12. Like,
so what makes me want to put it a little higher than Junie is it just feels like it's meshed better. It just feels like it mixes a little bit better with the flavor profile. It also didn't have a weird off taste as it warmed up.
Yeah.
And I feel like Junie had some strange, I don't remember what it was, but some strange like flavor as it warmed.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I got to give it to Westbrook. I mean, they do a good job. Transient, I believe, does too, but I do remember the 2 things with Transient that we kind of pointed out was the carbonation, and I don't feel like we had that with this.
Yeah.
Like, so I guess even that probably puts it up a little bit higher, like when you start thinking about it. Like, yeah, they had those carbonation issues, or what we perceive as carbonation issues, because this one held head a lot longer and just looked better, looked cleaner. And it gave you a chance to actually smell the beer with the head on it and to even taste it with some of that head on it, which I think does make somewhat of a difference. So, okay, 12. We'll go 12. 12 it is.
Both of the breweries are worth a visit, though.
Oh, yeah,
Westbrook
100%.
And Transient. I'll go to Transient every time I'm in Michigan. I don't get to South Carolina very often, but
Everybody
if I did,
should.
I would go to Westbrook. I would definitely go to Edmund's Oast. I've had some Edmund's Oast beers outside of that, but as far as like what Westbrook makes, I know the Gosa is out of this world, top notch Yosa, and Matt's gonna have to bring some of the IPAs back, and we'll talk about those too.
I will just I'll bring a ton back. Don't worry, I got this. I'll set it up properly this year. I've been really bad at like getting everything back in the past, but already mapping out an idea to do this one. So that's going to do it for the show. Make sure you follow us on Instagram. That's at Barrel Chat. The reason we say follow us, we do a lot of stories. We don't do a lot of posts. We try and keep the posts towards the actual episodes themselves, so that way things don't get lost very easily. So if we're out and about drinking, having a good time, we're going to post stories about what we're drinking. If you enjoy the show, make sure you leave us a 5-star rating on whatever podcast app you use. If you dislike the show, leave us a 4-star rating. I say that, one, as a joke, and two, it does potentially help bring in new listeners. I have absolutely no idea if that's a real fact or not, but it makes sense that if you're getting a bunch of 5 or 4 stars, that you're probably going to be on some mythical list somewhere, and it may even push people like as a recommended type thing, like, hey, you listen to this beer podcast, so you should listen to this one. I also feel like if somebody finds us randomly on Instagram because like we tag, like I was at Chatham Tap recently, they shared us on their story. So if somebody goes to us and then finds our podcast and it's like, oh, they got like a 4.5, 5-star rating, like I'll give them a shot. Like, to me, that's good. If we got a 2-star, I mean, I don't know. Are we doing untapped ratings around here? I'm gonna find you. We having fun. We having fun. I think we're having fun. So 5 or 4. And then if you got a beer that you want us to review, drop us a DM on Instagram or email us, barrelchatpodcast@gmail.com. The two kind of rules that we've tried to make here is, one, try and make it something that we can easily obtain. Either it's brewed here in Indiana or we can go find it at a local liquor store like a Total Wine or something. You hear about some of the places that we typically go to or are going to. So if you know of a place like in South Carolina, hey, you should really try this place or bring it back, let me know. I will definitely do my best. And if you hear about any of the stuff where we're going out of town or anything like that, let us know some places that we should hit and bring back and talk about. If you got a beer that you want us to try, whether it's something that you just have in your personal cellar collection or if you're a home brewer and you want to get your name out there, good or bad, we will accept your beer and we will talk about it on the podcast. Just, again, DM us or email us. But with that, I think that's going to do it for good. So we will see you guys next week. Cheers.
Cheers, y'all.